everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be doing a deep dive today on something pretty fascinating. It's the impact of the new Gordie Howe International Bridge, but specifically on cycling tourism.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about how this massive project could really change the way people experience Windsor and Detroit,
Right.
especially those who love exploring, on two wheels.
Yeah.
So to help us understand this a little better, we've gathered a really cool collection of sources. We've got expert opinions. We've got some thoughts from actual cycling enthusiasts, people who are out there on the trails.
Yeah.
And even some, historical perspectives to kind of round things out.
Cool.
So are you ready?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. So one of the things that really jumps out from these sources is that this bridge, it's not just like, connecting 2 points on a map, right?
Yeah, it's about sparking a transformation.
Exactly.
We're seeing Detroit really use this project as a springboard for broader revitalization.
Absolutely.
And that has major implications for Windsor as well.
Yeah. It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
And speaking of Detroit, they seem to be setting a pretty cool precedent with their whole community-focused approach,
Absolutely.
Like, for example, the bridge is opening with a dedicated lane just for pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, that's a really cool feature.
And it's going to be completely free.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? I mean, do you think that's a model that Windsor could maybe adopt as they're, planning their own kind of revitalization?
Oh, absolutely. That free access, I think, is key.
Right.
It sends a very clear message that this bridge is for everyone, not just cars.
Right.
And it really aligns with, I think, the overall trend we're seeing in cities around the world.
Yeah.
The shift towards more sustainable transportation.
Yeah.
And creating these more people-centered public spaces.
Yeah, it's all about, making cities more livable.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about cycling infrastructure specifically, what kind of stands out to you about what Detroit is doing?
Well, look at their riverfront. They've invested over $1 billion to create a 5.5-mile trail that's become a huge draw for cyclists and pedestrians.
Really?
But it's not just about the money, though. It's about the process.
Right.
They really involve the community every step of the way, holding hundreds of public meetings to gather input.
Wow.
And ensure the final design reflected what people actually wanted.
That's a great point. It sounds like their success really comes from listening to the residents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does Windsor stack up in terms of cycling infrastructure? I know they have existing trails like the Herb Gray Parkway and the Riverfront Trail.
Right.
But are they on the same level as Detroit?
Well, Windsor does have, I think, a pretty solid foundation to build upon, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Okay.
The question is, how can Windsor leverage its own unique assets while also learning from Detroit's successes?
Right, because simply replicating what Detroit has done might not be the best approach for Windsor.
Right.
They need to find their own path, their own identity within this evolving landscape.
Yes.
And, speaking of challenges, I've read that Windsor has been facing some difficulties, especially in its downtown core.
Okay.
Some say it needs to address issues like cleanliness and safety to really capitalize on the bridge's potential.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Adriano Ciotoli, the founder of WindsorEats, he's quite vocal about this. He argues that Windsor needs to step up its game, not just for tourists, but for its own residents.
Right.
And he's putting his money where his mouth is, currently focusing his tour business on Detroit, while Windsor catches up.
Wow.
So yes, there are challenges, but I see them as opportunities in disguise.
Okay.
Windsor has a chance to revitalize in a way that's authentic to its character without simply mimicking Detroit.
I love that perspective challenges as opportunities in disguise.
Yeah.
So as we think about building a better future for both cities, one theme keeps popping up in these sources, and that's community engagement.
Yeah, for sure.
Why is that so important in this context?
It's not just about checking a box, It's about recognizing that real lasting change happens when people feel heard and empowered.
Absolutely.
Mark Tillman, who leads the Metro 313 Cyclones cycling group in Detroit, he's a big advocate for this. Diverse representation at the planning table.
Right.
He stresses we need to hear from everyone, not just the usual suspects.
And over in Windsor, Steve Green, who runs the Windsor Farmers Market, he echoes that sentiment. He uses this term authentic talk, which seems to be about having these honest conversations,
Right.
addressing the real needs of the community and not shying away from the difficult topics. Can you elaborate on what he means by that?
Yeah, authentic talk is about cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of the matter. It's about acknowledging the challenges, whether that's a lack of bike parking, inadequate restroom facilities, or even deeper social issues that might be hindering progress.
Right.
It's about creating a space where people feel comfortable sharing their experiences, their concerns, their aspirations for the future.
That's powerful. It seems like both cities are realizing that community voices are essential for
Oh,
success.
yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of voices from the past, we got to talk about the Buxton National Historic Site.
Oh, yeah.
This incredible preserved black settlement near Chatham, Ontario.
It's a hidden gem.
It is. It's a powerful reminder of the area's rich history and the struggles and triumphs of the black community.
Absolutely. Buxton is, it deserves more attention, especially as we think about this, the potential of cycling tourism to connect people to history and culture.
Yeah.
It was founded in 1849 by Reverend William King as a haven for escaped slaves, and it flourished despite facing immense racism and opposition.
Wow.
Mark Tillman even suggests building a dedicated trail connecting Buxton to the Gordie Howe Bridge,
Really?
which I think would be an amazing way to weave history, culture, and active tourism together.
That's a fantastic idea, and it speaks to the bridge's potential to be more than just a physical connection, right?
Yeah.
It could be a conduit for sharing stories, fostering understanding, celebrating the diverse heritage of this region.
Absolutely. Shannon Prince, a former curator at Buxton,
Yeah.
invites everyone to experience its legacy of freedom and resilience. It's a reminder that progress is often hard-won,
Right.
and that we can learn valuable lessons from those who came before us.
Absolutely. And while we're on the topic of community-driven initiatives, let's talk about the Windsor Farmers Market.
Okay.
It's seen amazing growth in recent years, but I understand there are some challenges as well.
Yeah, what fascinates me about the market is the sheer passion and dedication of the people involved. You know,
Yeah.
they've built something truly special, but they're also realistic about the need for continued support and investment. Steve Green, the market manager, emphasizes that sustainable growth requires more than just enthusiasm.
Right.
It requires addressing practical issues like parking restroom facilities, creating an environment that's both welcoming and functional.
It sounds like they're facing a similar situation to the city as a whole, you
Yeah.
know? A need to balance growth with maintaining the authentic character that makes the market so special.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's a theme I think we'll continue to explore as we
Yeah.
delve deeper into the, potential and the challenges that lie ahead for both Windsor and Detroit as they navigate this new era of connection and opportunity.
It's pretty amazing how something like a bridge can be so symbolic,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's not just about the, physical structure, it's about the connections it creates, literally and figuratively.
Exactly. And when we talk about cycling tourism, the Gordie Howe Bridge is poised to be a game changer.
Absolutely.
It has the potential to attract all kinds of cyclists,
Yeah.
from, casual riders who want a scenic day trip
Right.
to those hardcore enthusiasts who are looking to rack up some serious miles.
Yeah, and with the rise of e-bikes, we're seeing these longer distances become more accessible to a wider range of people.
Right.
That opens up all sorts of possibilities for exploration and adventure.
Absolutely. And events like the Pedals and Passports
Mm-hmm.
ride, organized by the Metro 313 Cyclones,
Okay.
demonstrate that cross-border cycling tourism is already happening.
Right.
They venture into Windsor from Detroit and showcase some of the hidden gems on both sides of the border.
It's fascinating how they're also incorporating history into their rides. They've even highlighted the legacy of Major Taylor, that pioneering black cyclist from the late 1800s,
Wow.
who raced in both the U.S. and Canada.
That's a great example of how cycling can be a vehicle for storytelling and cultural exploration. It's not just about the physical journey, it's about the connections you make along the way.
Okay, so we've talked about the bridge, the trails, the potential for tourism, the importance of community engagement.
Right.
But what does this all mean for the average person listening? Why should they care about a bridge in a place they might never even visit?
That's a great question. I think the Gordie Howe Bridge project offers valuable lessons that extend far beyond this specific location. Think of it as a case study in how cities can approach urban revitalization, prioritize sustainable transportation, and foster a sense of community.
So even if you never cycle across this bridge yourself,
Right.
there are takeaways here that are relevant to anyone who cares about cities and their future.
Precisely. We're seeing this growing global awareness of the need to create more livable, vibrant, and connected urban spaces. And the Gordie Howe Bridge is a tangible example of how those ideas can be put into practice.
And let's not forget the economic impact. I mean, increased tourism means more jobs, more investment, and a boost for local businesses on both sides of the border.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for that economic impact to be truly sustainable, both cities need to play to their strengths.
Okay.
Detroit has its automotive heritage, it's a burgeoning art scene, its spectacular riverfront.
Right.
Windsor has its Canadian charm, its proximity to wineries and agricultural areas, its own cultural attractions like the Buxton National Historic Site.
Right.
It's about leveraging those unique assets to create this mutually beneficial tourism ecosystem.
And I imagine there's also potential for, cross-border partnerships like joint tourism initiatives or cultural exchanges.
The possibilities are endless, but it all comes back to building bridges.
Okay.
Not just physical ones, but bridges of understanding, collaboration, and a shared vision.
I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the contrast between Detroit's revitalized downtown and Windsor's challenges. We saw them as complementary strengths.
I like where you're going with that. It's about flipping the script and recognizing that both cities have something unique to offer. Imagine a scenario where Detroit's urban energy inspires Windsor to revitalize its downtown.
Right.
While Windsor's slower pace and connection to nature provide a welcome respite for Detroiters seeking a change of scenery.
It's about creating a dynamic where each city enhances the other, rather than viewing it as a zero-sum game.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the potential for sharing resources and expertise.
Right.
Perhaps Detroit's experience with riverfront development could inform Windsor's own waterfront plans.
Okay.
Maybe Windsor's agricultural connections could help Detroit expand its urban farming initiatives.
It's about finding those win-win scenarios where both cities benefit, but that requires open communication and a willingness to break down perceived barriers.
And that's where community engagement becomes so crucial.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough for city leaders to make plans in isolation.
Yeah.
They need to hear from the people who live, work, and play in these cities. They need to tap into the diverse perspectives and ideas that exist within those communities.
We've seen examples of that already with people like Mark Tillman pushing for inclusive planning and Steve Green emphasizing the need for authentic conversations and community-driven solutions.
Those are the voices that need to be amplified, the people who are building bridges, not just with concrete and steel, but with shared vision, collaborative spirit, and a genuine desire to create something better together.
Their efforts are truly inspiring. They remind us that progress is possible, that collaboration can lead to amazing things, and that sometimes all it takes is a spark of imagination to bridge the gap between what is and what could be.
And as we move forward, I think it's important to ask ourselves, if this bridge is a symbol of connection, what other bridges do we need to build in our own communities, in our own lives?
Right.
What gaps need to be bridged, what divides need to be crossed, and what connections need to be strengthened?
That's a powerful question to consider. As we're wrapping up our deep dive into the Gordie Howe International Bridge, it's clear that the potential benefits are huge, but it can't be a one-way street to Detroit. So what other bridges need to be built to ensure that both cities share in the prosperity?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, and it's a complex one, but I think we can draw some insights from the sources we've explored. It's not just about building physical structures. It's about addressing deeper systemic issues.
You're right. We can't just assume that, a shiny new bridge is going to magically solve all of Windsor's challenges.
Exactly.
We need to tackle those head on.
And those challenges like poverty, homelessness, and crime, they require more than just superficial fixes.
Right.
We need systemic solutions that address the root causes.
And that's where community engagement becomes absolutely crucial.
Absolutely.
We need to hear from the people who are most affected by these issues, understand their perspectives, and work together to find solutions that are both effective and equitable.
It's about empowering communities, giving them a voice in shaping their own future. It's not about imposing top-down solutions. It's about co-creating a vision that works for everyone.
So let's get specific. What are some tangible steps that could be taken to build those bridges and create a more inclusive and prosperous future for both Windsor and Detroit?
Well, for starters, we need to invest in Windsor's infrastructure. And I'm not just talking about bike paths and trails. We need to look at public transportation, affordable housing community spaces, things that improve the quality of life for all residents.
It's about creating a city where people want to live, work, and raise families, not just a place to visit for a day.
Exactly. And that means addressing those quality of life issues that Adriano Ciotoli highlighted, Making Windsor a cleaner, safer, and more welcoming city is essential not only for attracting tourists, but also for retaining residents and attracting new businesses.
And I think there's also a need to kind of shift the narrative about Windsor, both internally and externally. It's a city with a rich history, a vibrant culture, incredible natural beauty.
Yeah.
We need to celebrate those assets and tell those stories in a way that resonates with people.
It's about fostering a sense of pride and identity,
Yeah.
both for residents and for visitors. Windsor needs to embrace its unique character and showcase its potential as a destination in its own right, not just as a gateway to Detroit.
Right. Perhaps as those bridges are built, as Windsor finds its footing and reclaims its narrative, we'll see a more balanced flow of people and ideas across that bridge. Detroiters venturing into Windsor to experience its unique offerings and a more collaborative and mutually beneficial relationship emerging between the two cities.
That's a vision worth striving for a future, where the Gordie Howe International Bridge truly symbolizes a connection between two communities, each with its own strengths and challenges, but united by a shared destiny.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Gordie Howe International Bridge and its impact on cycling tourism and the relationship between Windsor and Detroit. We've explored the opportunities, the challenges, and the inspiring stories of people working to build bridges, both literally and figuratively. But as always, we want to leave you with something to ponder. If this bridge is a symbol of connection, what other bridges do we need to build in our own communities and our own lives? What gaps need to be bridged, what divides need to be crossed, and what connections need to be strengthened? Think about it, explore it, and let's keep building those bridges together. Thanks for joining us.